What are some of the other ramifications, say economically or politically, to this phenomenon?
Well, economically, the largest generation is now in the workforce, the millennials. I mean, the first generation bigger than the baby boom generation. And millennials are struggling. They're struggling because of all these early blooming pressures left the vast majority of them in a state of self-doubt about their capabilities. And then you add the very real fact that many of them were just getting going or just coming into the workforce, and then the 2008-2009 recession, and the aftermath of a pretty slow growth period, which along with the automation of more and more jobs meant that those jobs weren't there for them, and the paths to promotion were harder to get. So I interviewed Michael Milken recently, and we were talking about that. We have a $1.5 trillion student debt problem. Now, when people debate student debt, it just like quickly devolves into the right of center is this, view is this, and the left of center is that. And people on the right will hear Elizabeth Warren say we should consider debt forgiveness, or Pete Buttigieg, the South Bend mayor who's caught the fancy of a lot of people on that side of the political ledger. And the conservatives will just immediately say, nah, if Elizabeth Warren's for it, it must be socialism. We can't possibly do that. We would just create a moral hazard. You know, these people would never pay off a loan again. And you say, well, that's kind of funny. When a business gets into financial trouble, don't we allow them a Chapter 11, workout structure? Yes, we do. So Milken's thesis is, if you looked at this economically and you took all the politics away, you would see that the $1.5 trillion debt overhang is going to cause multiples of $1.5 trillion more in damage over the working careers of the millennials, because a fewer number of them are going to take risks and do entrepreneurial things because they have to have a paycheck. And that is going to cause untold damage. 1.5 trillion, as big as it is, will be trivial to the damage of less than optimal millennials who are less than optimal because they were crushed by the student debt. And when you put it that way, and then you look at what businesses are able to do, even the President of the United States 3 times used the legal bankruptcy laws to get out of a bind, and on he went. And his defenders are quick to point out that it was legal, and they're right. But why shouldn't indebted students? By the way, the moral hazard argument is that if you let these people off the hook for their student debt, then no one will ever pay off a loan again. You've just taught them to evade their debts. They weren't the ones that created the moral hazard. They weren't the ones that created this conveyor belt, all this early pressure to get into the most expensive university you could afford or not afford, and they had to get a loan to handle. It was their parents. It was teachers and educators. It was schools themselves putting out messages direct and indirect, that if you come to fill in the blank, whatever elite college, if it's an Ivy League college or Stanford or places, MIT, places like that. I mean, that is a subtle messaging that they're putting out all the time. Come here, you'll have a great career. They don't say that directly. Everybody knows that's sort of the dog whistle, that they all whistle. And that's a $300,000 deal over a 4-year career. How many people can afford that? So consequently, people took on more debt. Colleges, knowing this, have raised the price of tuition and the overall bill for college at a rate that has exceeded the rate of inflation by 3x over the last 40 years. They have nearly unlimited pricing power, and they know it. So it wasn't the kids who created the moral hazard.